Hi, this is Geometry B, Unit 4. We're on right triangles and trigonometry. Lesson 3, trigonometry. So what we're going to learn today is the three trigonometric functions, sine, cosine, and tangent, and how to use them to solve right triangles. Do note that all the triangles we solve today will be right triangles. A right triangle is a triangle with a square corner or a 90-degree angle in it. Okay, so let me start by drawing a 90-degree angle. So we're going to draw a right triangle. Okay, and we're going to draw it so that it has an acute angle on the left, right angle on the bottom right. Okay, and it's got a side that's kind of diagonal, the way I've drawn it. Now, they can mess you up by rotating and flipping and spinning this and reflecting this triangle into different orientations. And that's why it's important for us to have the names of the sides down. Okay? First of all, when we solve triangles, we always have an angle that we're referring to. We'll call it the reference angle. Okay? This is the reference angle. And the reference angle can change, okay? But the side opposite the reference angle, the side across from the reference angle, is called the opposite side. Opposite. The side across from the 90-degree angle, the perpendicular angle, the side across from the perpendicular angle is called the hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is the longest side of any right triangle. It's the diagonal. Okay, that's always the hypotenuse. The side that touches the reference angle but is not the hypotenuse is called the adjacent side. Okay. Now it's important to note that if my reference angle changes, the opposite and the adjacent switch. Okay, but I'm not going to draw that for now for the sake of time. So there's how we name the sides. That's the first hurdle to get over. So make sure you are comfortable naming the sides hypotenuse, opposite, and adjacent. Okay. Once you have that down, then you need to remember or memorize this mnemonic. So, ka, toa, SOHCAHTOA. I like to remember this story. I was in the Marshall Islands for a year. We walked around with flip-flops. In Japanese, we call them zoris. And we walked around in flip-flops on the coral reef, and coral is very sharp. So one day I was walking on the coral reef with my zoris, and my toe got cut. And it became infected. It was we were fearing a staph infection, so the doctor said, I want you to soak your foot in a solution of warm water and bleach, about a cup of bleach per a gallon of water. And because you concentrate it more and it starts to burn the skin. And that's to fight infection. So I had to SOHCAHTOA, SOHCAHTOA. However you remember it, SOHCAHTOA will help you remember the trig functions. For example, the sine of an angle is the opposite side over the hypotenuse, SOH. The cosine of an angle is the adjacent side over the hypotenuse, CAH. The tangent of an angle is the opposite side over the adjacent side, TOA. TOA. So take a look at how that works here. SOH, so. CAH, ka. TOA, toa. Sine, cosine, and tangent. Okay? So once you've named the sides, opposite, adjacent, hypotenuse, then you memorize SOHCAHTOA and memorize that means sine is opposite over hypotenuse, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, tangent is opposite over adjacent. Once you have that down, you're ready to use the trig functions to solve triangles. So I'm going to keep this up here, but I'm going to go to a new slide here, and I'm going to draw a right triangle here. Okay? And we're going to solve the right triangle. Okay, we'll see how much we have time for. I don't want to make this video too long because I want you to have time to work on the exercises. But let's say I've got a right triangle. Okay, and we're told one of the angles. We're told two of the angles actually, because one of the angles in a right triangle is at 90 degrees. Okay. By the way, if you know two angles in a triangle, you automatically know the third angle because the angles should add to 180. Okay? So let's say we have this angle is 40 degrees. Okay? This angle is 40 degrees. And let's say this side is 15 inches. 15 inches. Okay? Now let's name the sides. The reference angle in this case is the angle that we know. This is the reference angle. So if that's the reference angle, then this is the opposite, this is the adjacent, and this is the hypotenuse. Okay? So it's important to clearly identify the angles that we're concerned with. And let's say I want to find the short leg of this triangle here. X. Okay? So I have identified the opposite and the hypotenuse. The opposite is the side I would like to know. The hypotenuse is the side that I don't know. Or the opposite is the side that I'd like to know. The hypotenuse is the side that I do know. Okay? And that combined with the 40-degree angle allows me to write the following equation. Okay? Which trig function ends in OH? Well, that would be SOH, S-O-H. So I'm going to use the sine function to write an equation. Sine of 40 degrees equals opposite x over hypotenuse 15. Okay? So all of that, naming the sides, memorizing SOHCAHTOA, all of that combined to allow me to write an equation that I can then solve. Okay? Sine of 40 is just something you punch on your calculator. It is a number. So I'm going to solve this for x. Now the way I solve this for x is I do the opposite of divide 15. I'm going to multiply both sides by 15. Multiply both sides by 15. That gets rid of divide 15. And we get x equals 15 times the sine of 40. Okay? And now it's time to reach for a calculator. Let's go ahead and reach for a calculator. I'm going to go for my Desmos calculator here. Okay, get rid of that. Okay, so I'm just going to use this. Now, one thing about Desmos, there are different degree measures. There are radians and there are degrees. Desmos defaults to radian measure, not degrees. So you're going to need to click on the wrench tool every time you open Desmos and select degrees. The wrench mode is the settings tool. Make sure it is on degrees, otherwise your answers won't make sense. Okay? But after that, all I need to do is type 15 sine 40. And it's that simple. It's 9.64 to the nearest tenth, about 9.6. 9.6. Always check to make sure your answer makes sense. If this is 15, does it make sense for this to be 9.6? Well, it apparently should be considerably shorter than 15. 9.6 is considerably shorter than 15 on the magnitude of a little bit more than half of it. So it does match. Okay? All right, so that's how to use the trig function. I want to do one more example because this is an example where we use multiplication to solve for. Sometimes we have an extra step, and I want to show you that. So I'm going to hide this page here and add a new page. Okay, so let's say I've got some right triangle here. Okay, and we've got a right triangle. And here we go. And this time I tell you this angle is 35 degrees and this is 15 inches. Okay? So now we've got the reference angle. The angle we know is always the reference angle. Okay. The right angle, which tells me the hypotenuse is over here. Okay. So that makes this the opposite side and this the adjacent side. And let's say I want to find the hypotenuse. We're going to call that x. Okay? So take the side that you want to know, the side that you do know, okay, and the reference angle and write an equation. Okay, we have opposite and hypotenuse. We need opposite and hypotenuse again. Oh, it looks like that's going to be so. So we're going to use sine. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So we're going to write sine of 35 equals opposite 15 over hypotenuse x. Now the reason I wanted to show you this is a case where x, the variable, is in the bottom in the fraction in the denominator. Okay, and there's a couple of ways we can do this. I'm going to show you one way and not complicate it by showing you all the ways that we can solve this. But one way is this. One way to get rid of a division is to multiply by x. Multiply both sides by x. That gets rid of the divide x and leaves this equation looking like this. X sine 35 equals 15. And now I'm going to solve for x by dividing, because that's the opposite of multiplying, by sine 35. Divide by sine 35. Okay? And so x equals 15 divide sine 35. Notice last time we multiplied, this time we divide by the sine. Okay? And so again, I'm going to reach for my Desmos calculator. Okay, and we're going to take 15 divide sine 35. Now, because I already changed the wrench tool, the tool to read degrees and not radians, I don't need to set it again. Every time you open Desmos, you'll need to set that. So this is 26.1517 to the nearest tenth, 26.2 inches. 26.2 inches. Now again, I want to make sure this makes sense compared to the side I know. The side I know is 15. That's the small side of the triangle. It looks like 26.2 is almost double that. And yes, that does appear to be almost twice as long. Okay? And so that's how you use the trig functions. Sine, cosine, and tangent.